So, my friend, I want to ask you, have you been listening to some of my podcasts for a while and identified for yourself all the areas that you feel your business could be better in? Maybe you just are so busy you haven't yet mastered the working as much as you like bit. Or maybe you're just not bringing in the money, like you're struggling with the income, or it's just not enough. Well, it's time for us to have a conversation. In the show notes, there is a link to my Evolution call. If you're a dance boss and you are ready to take action, let's have a chat and let's see where I can take you. Welcome, lovelies, to the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast. My name is Deborah Laws, the dance business expert. My passion is to help you turn your passion into profit while guiding you to work less and earn more. I'm super excited to share interviews with you that I know will inspire and motivate you in your schools, as well as my solo shows where I shall be sharing some great tips and strategies. So if you love the show, please do remember to review, subscribe, and share it with your fellow dance boss friends. So let's get stuck into the business of dance. So everybody, I have a wonderful treat for you today. The lovely Megan, who is an ex-professional Irish dancer and 3-time world champion, is joining us to talk about a niche that she has managed to find within the dance industry and has created a really successful business from that. Megan, hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, we are all about the niches and the USP. I would love you to explain to all of the listeners what it is that you do. Well, maybe a bit about your background first and what it is that you do now.
Okay, so I, like you said, was a 3-time world champion competitive Irish dancer. I started dancing probably around age 6 or 7, and I finished my competitive career at 18. And then went on to join Michael Flatley's Lord of the Dance on tour around the world for 7 years. And during that time, I was also in lots of other sort of professional shows and filling those professional years up as much as possible. And then when I left the show, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went to uni and actually studied criminology, so a very different path.
Wow.
With the plans to be a police officer thrown in there at some point. And then I was personal training in a gym, and I knew I wanted to work with Irish dancers. So I had a couple of local dancers working with me. But then I didn't really know how I could reach further into that. I enjoyed working with the dancers the most and was trying to work out a way I could reach more dancers. So I had tried a couple of things, but didn't really believe that online would work for dancers. So lockdown hit at kind of the perfect time for me, which always makes me feel a bit weird saying, because obviously so many people struggled during that period. But it allowed dancers to get used to working online. And during that time, I offered lots of free classes to just keep them fit and keep them enjoying sort of like dance style fitness, and reminding them that they can work on things, even though dance class isn't happening, reminding them that they can work on things that are base level. So like their technique, turnout, stretching, flexibility, all of those sorts of things, so that when they did get the chance to go back to class, they will have progressed, even though they might not have danced in that period. And that sort of opened up a space for me to build the business that I have today, which works with Irish dancers outside of dance class. So they have their dance school that they attend. And then we're like an add-on on the side that works with them online in their movement. So kind of like troubleshooting their technique issues and helping them to develop that. And then mindset, so helping them work on confidence for competitions and getting over nerves and things like that. So yeah, that's the model that we have today.
Amazing. And so you're teaching people all over the world, presumably?
Yes. Yeah, we're global. Of course, there's lots of places Irish dance is, and there's many places that it isn't. Or so yeah, we've got people from the US, Australia, New Zealand, Austria, France, Hong Kong, all over really. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well done to you for finding that niche and filling that gap, as they say in the entrepreneurial world. So in terms of the schools that you or the students that you work with, how do you find that what you're offering is different to what they get within their dance schools, for example? Because I think because we were chatting a little bit earlier before we went live, and you were saying about how, like, I'm from a very traditional dance school background, so ballet, modern, tap, musical
Yeah.
theatre. I hold my hands up. I don't know. I know very little about Irish dancing. I did do my qualifications in national, and I think we covered about 2 Irish dances.
Nice.
That was about when I was about 18, and you probably would cringe at those if you saw them. Not that I would demonstrate those anymore, but I know next to nothing about the Irish dance world. So you were saying that it's, whereas in a lot of other dance disciplines, we would have like floor bar classes, or we might have, classes specifically for leaps or turns. And you were saying that doesn't really exist. Am I right, in the Irish dance world?
Yeah, I had never thought about this previously, because you just know what you know, don't you? I suppose. In the same way that you always had that and just kind of assume probably that all of the dance forms work in the same way. I kind of assume that all of the dance forms work like us until I did a bar instructing course. Now I have no ballet background, but I was really intrigued at like the fitness side of bar. And it was when I did that, I realized how poor I was at a lot of the turnout technique. And I was thinking, I'm supposed to be a professional. I'm supposed to be a world champion at this, yet I'm really struggling. Imagine how that add on and working on these techniques specifically within just the movement then can impact dancers. So Irish dancers, we kind of just tend to go into dance class, do a good warm up, learn our steps, and then work through the dances. There's so many dances that we kind of just have to practice those. And it almost doesn't feel like there's enough time in the day and in the week to get everything done. And that's where the space kind of came for us. Now, some dance schools are set up slightly different and are starting to sort of develop these strength classes maybe added in and fitness classes maybe added in that are different to dance class. But it's very new within Irish dancing, having that idea of working on the different areas at different times.
Yeah, I love that. And, I love anybody that's leading the way, doing something new and, breaking through new boundaries. And like, that just excites me, whatever it is. So I'd love to go back a little bit to when you first started to dance. Like, what was your first experience in Irish? Did you do any other forms of dance, or was it literally just Irish that you did the whole time?
Just Irish that I did. If you saw me try to do any other form of dance, you would laugh as much as me laughing at you probably doing your Irish.
I was just going to say.
Everyone's like, I bet you're great on the dance floor. I'm like, no, I'm absolutely terrible. I probably got a bit of rhythm, that's about it, and timing. Yeah. But other than that, no, always just Irish. I did a little bit of gymnastics, so I kind of had that, a little bit of artisticness through that. But I actually started properly when I was about 3. And my brother was about 4. My mum put us into dancing. And I remember screaming, crying, thinking, the teacher shouts too much. I'm not going there. But he wasn't even shouting. He was just like really encouraging. And then when I did end up going back, that was how I really thrived. And that's quite a funny thing. Like the way that dancing teacher really worked well with me personally, because I needed that person. He used to run around with me dancing to like give me energy. He'd almost spend more energy than I did in dance class. So it's funny how what scared me off in the first place was actually what I really thrived from then when I went back at like 6 and 7.
Yeah. And so this kind of then led on to a really successful career. I mean, we all want to ask you about what it was like being in Lord of the Dance. How was it working with Michael Flatterly? How did you find those years when you were in the show?
I think that was a quite an interesting jump for me because competitive dance in Irish dancing and for like professional dance are really different. And I speak quite a lot about this. I found the transition really difficult because I'd gone from being the best and being the best in a very sort of like, not machine, but like, what's the word I'm trying to say? Like I really had to practice to be good. I wasn't naturally as good as many of my competition. So I was quite, focused on the practice and getting everything perfect by repetition. Whereas when you go into performing and in the professional world, it was a lot more flowy and free and a bit like, I wasn't used to that. And it took me probably 3 years to really settle into the professional style of dance.
Wow.
Which was quite interesting mentally as well, because I've gone from being sort of like the best and the top of the pile to being very near the bottom. But I just worked and was persistent with that work. And you just have so many amazing people around you. Of course, when you go into a professional show, there's lots of different levels. So there's people that are just coming with you and you're brand new to it. There's people that have been there for years and it's like water off a duck's back to them. They're just so used to it. And as you transition through that, you kind of don't notice yourself going through those phases, but you notice the other people at their different phases. But yeah, the experience touring with a huge show like that, we got to do some incredible venues around the world. And my first tour was actually Michael Flatley's return. So he hadn't danced in the show for about 10 years. And yeah, the first tour I landed, which was a bit lucky, I think. He happened to be coming back. So we did big arenas. We did a UK tour so all of my family could come. So that was a very insane experience.
Yeah. Oh, how incredible. And would you say, because I've always wondered that the choreography in a performing type arena with Irish dance is quite different to competition and kind of the technical side of things? Because I always look and think, is this slightly different because it's a show, they've got to put on a show?
Yeah, I think the difference is it has to be, I think that the shows thrive off the fact that everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. So the difficulty rating kind of lowers in terms of, I've seen this across different shows. Some shows that I've worked in, I feel like the steps are too difficult so that everybody does it in their own kind of style. And then it's not as impressive for the audience. Yeah. Whereas it might be impressive for an Irish dancer to go and watch those shows, but actually the style of the steps, and that's what Lord of the Dance does really well. Its show is actually a lot more about like the arms and the performance and the costumes and then the actual synchronicity rather than the difficulty of the dancing. And what seems simple to us, if you think about it, that have been doing this for so many years, is not simple to the audience's eye. And I think that's what Michael Flatley does really well. His choreography is for the audience, for the non-dance audience, which is why I think it did so well as a touring show.
Yeah, I can totally get that. And choreography is something that is a huge passion and was very much a huge passion for when I was a teacher and running my studios. And I remember when I was taking my teaching exams, and one of the things I did get complimented on was my artistry and my creativity. Mm-hmm. And somebody said to me once, what we love about your choreography, Deborah, is the fact that it's really quite simple, mm-hmm. but it's very creative and it looks really different. So it wasn't that my choreography was hard or technical or complex. It just was creative. I could give it to anyone and it could look good. And I suppose that's similar to what you're saying there.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think that's, I suppose, important within our Irish dance competitive side as well. I see lots of dancers get given choreography that's too difficult. And when they dance at a competition, I think, what teachers let that dancer, when they're probably really good at so many other things, but they're doing steps that don't really suit them and their style. And I suppose that, I don't know, that just frustrates me sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that probably goes across the board. I'm sure there's listeners listening now that are competition schools that are kind of thinking, yes, constantly battling with the kids, and parents expect all the hard steps, but we know as teachers that's not going to show them off terribly well because they're not ready for those steps. So yeah, that feels like perhaps an across the board thing.
Yeah.
So I would love to know, so you went from being a dancer to a professional dancer to touring and in shows, and then obviously you saw this opportunity in lockdown. Do you feel like you have an entrepreneurial spirit in you? Like, is that where this came from? Or was it more of a, I've got to create something for myself because I know I'm no longer going to dance?
Yeah, I've thought about this quite often because I definitely do have a natural entrepreneurial spirit, I believe. But I've also spoken about whether this is facilitated through professional touring as a dancer, because you kind of have a lot of you time, a lot of thinking time when you're traveling from one place to the next. A lot of days off, like recovery days, we have a bit more space to think and kind of a lot of time. And I've seen most of my dance friends that have now left professional dancing have started their own businesses. So I don't know whether going into that world, well, you got to be a certain type of person in the first place, but then going into that world kind of gives you that little propel forwards, I think. And I think, I suppose, essentially professional Irish dance and professional touring in any sort of show is self-employment to begin with. So you're always having to look for other ways to earn money. I think that probably gives you that first little step up to, okay, you almost have that self-belief before having to take a deep dive. Because I think the scary thing for people setting up on their own and that side of things is actually like, but what if I can't? And I've always proven to myself that I can. And I think I didn't realize I had that evidence from professional dance. I do think that helps.
I was just going to say, do you think that this comes from, and this will be all forms of dance, I feel like we know as teachers that there are benefits of dance, and we often talk about the benefits of dance when we're marketing our services and our classes and what it is that we do. So we know what those things are. But in terms of, what we learn as a dancer and taking those into, being a small business owner, I think it is, isn't it? It's that resilience, it's that determination, it's that ambition. I mean, gosh, you've got to be ambitious and resilient and dedicated in order to be a dancer. And in fact, as I say those three things, those are three of my core values for Dance Business Lab, which is really interesting because literally just made me think they all come from growing up as a dancer.
100%.
And so it's so lovely that those qualities that we're all gaining as a child going through dance that we don't even know we're gaining, probably our parents aren't even properly appreciating that we're gaining these qualities, can lead us on to be these great little entrepreneurs. We can really dig deep and we can really find a way for ourselves, which is lovely. And another word you mentioned was self-belief. And actually, I've got that written down as one of my questions. Like, I don't really need to ask it now because I think we've already done it. But the question was, where does that self-belief come from that made you think that I can start this business and it can be really successful and I can coach people from all over the world? But I think we have answered that question.
Yeah, I actually think about this, or I have thought about this a little bit more recently when people ask me questions about sort of the business and how it's got to where it is. And I do think that and I speak to dancers that I work with about this, it's like giving yourself evidence and building up. You wouldn't just make a scientific claim without having all of this evidence to back it up. That's when people believe the science with the evidence. Like, people don't just believe random things that people say. The evidence has to prove to you that you can do it. And I think naturally, I kind of I've got this deep-rooted self-belief that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I think sometimes I feel a bit cocky saying that, but more recently I've sort of owned it and thought, well, no, it's always worked in the past, even if it takes a little bit longer, or like, I'm not afraid to fail and try again. And I think that's something that dance really gives you. Because You get given new steps and you try it and you fail and you have to keep trying. And yes, you might get frustrated. Yes, you might need to come back the next day. But I think that, the evidence of dance and trying and something working, I think, that's what self-belief comes from.
So I thought I would just share with you guys today the planners that I have produced for dance school owners, because these are flying out of Amazon like hotcakes. And if you don't have yours yet, then all you have to do is pop to Amazon and type into the search Deborah Laws, and all 3 books will come up. So the Ultimate Dance Business Planner I designed for you so that you had a little bit of a Deborah on your desktop. The planners are full of business training, tips, motivational quotes, things to do at the start of the month, things to do at the end of the month, ways in which you can plan out your marketing and your retention, and they are selling all over the world. So go to Amazon, grab your #1 best-selling Ultimate Dance Business Planner and enjoy mapping out the growth for your studio. Yeah, and it is that instilled in us, isn't it? If at first you don't succeed, try and try again, and of which you must have done to have ended up being a world champion. I mean, that doesn't happen without a heck of a lot of resilience and hard work. And okay, I didn't win this comp, but I'll keep going and maybe I'll win the next one. And so I think, relating this now to my listeners who are all dance studio owners in many different shapes and forms from all over the world, I think what I would love to say to them is, if you have a school and a business that isn't where you want it to be, remember those ingrained qualities that you have, that you've gained through dance, because they're all there. Yeah. Nobody running a dance school now hasn't been taught this over the years, whether they've been aware of it or not, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Nobody running a dance school hasn't had knocks growing up as a dancer, hasn't not achieved the results that they were hoping for, hasn't had someone tell them the 10th time that it could still be better. Like, we've all had that. And those experiences form qualities in us. And it's those qualities that can help you get your school to where you really want it to go. And that takes me on to a word, Megan, that I'd love to ask you about, which is the word success. What does success look like for you now running your current business?
I think that what success has meant to me has changed a lot throughout the years. At one point it was followers on Instagram, which I'm sure we've all experienced. But I think right now I measure success in how happy the dancers are that I work with, and how much I feel like I'm actually making a positive change without burning myself out at the same time. And the last part is the bit that's like the new part, because that's always been, the first 2 have always been how I measure the success deep down. But previously it's been at the detriment of my own sort of like health, my own social life, and lots of other things. Whereas now I prioritize both, and I try to, and it's hard to balance, and it always will be hard to balance. And I'm sure the dance school teachers listening are thinking exactly the same, especially because our sports and our dance and our art forms are in antisocial hours. I think that makes a big impact to the rest of your life. But managing that, setting my boundaries, and when I consistently uphold those boundaries, that's when I feel successful at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that so much, because that was the next question I had written down.
I've read them.
You're a bit of a mind reader today, I think.
Mystic Meg.
Yeah, Mystic Meg. Love it. Success is such an interesting and powerful word. And it means so much to so many different things to different people. So my question for all my listeners is, how are you feeling right now in terms of the business that you've created, in terms of how successful it makes you feel? I'm not talking about in terms of how successful it is, excuse me, because that is going to always be different. And I don't think there is a successful point when you get to hear you are successful. It's an ongoing journey that can continue or stop for all of us whenever we choose. Mm-hmm. So some people might think, you know what, if I get 100 students, that's it, I'm done. That looks like success for me. That's where I want to sit. For others, you could put a naught on the end of there and they want to keep going until they've got 1,000, or maybe they don't have an end goal in mind. But the success part to me is how happy, and you've just literally summed all this up so beautifully, how happy are my students and my customers? How happy am I running this business? And how happy are the important people around me? Mm-hmm. And I think, finding success for a lot of people isn't about the money. It's about do I have a balance? Do I have a job that I love doing because it doesn't take over my entire life?
Yeah.
And I think finding that, and again, it's different for all of us, but finding that, and it doesn't have to be a balance either. Like, I don't feel like it's 50-50. We have to spend 50% of our time in our school and 50% with our families. Like, it could be 80-20. It's about whether the balance feels right.
Yeah.
It's getting that bit right, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it's seasonal as well. There'll be periods where you spend more time working on the business and in the school, and whether that's coming up to exams or shows or whatever it might be. And then there's times where you can take that more time with the family, and it's just working out what the best of that is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it sounds like we've got a great balance. You've got a successful business. Still got big dreams, Megan?
Yeah, the dreams never end.
What have you got? Dreams never end. Are you happy to share some of your
Yes,
dreams?
100%.
Where would we find Megan? Where would we find you in 5 years' time?
Oh, now I feel like I'm journaling. In 5 years' time, I'd like to be reaching more dancers. And hosting more in-person events for the community that I've built. Community is a really big part of what we do, and we want to create, and we want to continue to create, I suppose, like a real welcoming community for the dancers and the parents. A lot of what we do also supports parents, which has kind of, again, been an accidental byproduct of what we do. The parents use a lot of our resources to be able to help younger dancers if they've not experienced Irish dance before. So I'd like to sort of continue growing in the way that we have, reach more dancers, of course, but also be able to offer more in-person stuff and be able to offer more for free, really, so that everybody can access this next level and everybody has the education that they need to know how to improve outside of dance class. So that's where I'd like to be, I think.
Going forward, yeah, lots more of that. And what advice would you give if you were talking to a dance studio owner right now who has a wonderful idea for something that they'd love to do that's maybe a little bit different? They feel like this is kind of not really out there, like very similar to what you did. They found a niche, they've got an idea, but maybe nobody else is doing it. So they're a bit scared to do it because they think, what if it fails? What if the reason it's not out there is because it's not a great idea? Like, what would you say to someone that's just got that little acorn of an idea, little kind of itch that they feel they want to scratch, but they're just a bit scared to go for it?
I think, well, there's a few different answers. I think if you've already got an audience that you know this would be for, then ask. I think that's the first thing. People will very quickly tell you yes or no, that I would do this or I would not. So like the market research side of things, whether that is an audience you already have or borrowing an audience from somebody. So reaching out to different people that you know have got this audience and just asking that question, that will give you that first little bit of confidence within it. And then from there, it's starting small and just gradually just reaching for that first little step. And then that gives you the evidence, again, kind of like that self-belief that I was talking about earlier. Provide yourself with the evidence, whether that is having 10 people turn up to something free that's basically testing the idea, and then build from there. So it's like not trying to reach for the biggest thing first. It's just taking it little step by step, and setting yourself those little milestones, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think that makes it feel manageable. That makes it feel like, oh, actually, yeah, maybe I could just do that first. Maybe I don't know, go and hold it. Say I've got a big dream to open a college, a different type of college than one that ever exists. And it just feels huge, So maybe you just start with who would I teach? Why is it different? And how can I go out there and just start with workshops and start to build that up? So it is that, break that big dream right down. And what's the little baby step that feels safe and easy and doable? And how can it grow kind of slowly from there? So that's great advice. Thank you. And I hope anyone that's listening that's been sitting on the edge of an idea for a long time, I hope that's a really great practical piece of advice that Megan's given you there. Megan, if you went back to talk to you, Megan, 5 years ago in lockdown, when you came up with this idea, if you could do one thing differently or one thing that would help you do things quicker, what might it be? What have you learned?
I think I got so into the business that I was spending so much time within it that I really found it difficult to look at the business from the outside. So I ended up spending probably 2 or 3 years going down the wrong path, and not necessarily the wrong path. I obviously learned and we grew in that time. But I was so busy making sure that other coaches that were working with the business were okay, and that I was giving them enough work, that I actually wasn't doing what was right for the business. So I would say make sure that you set aside time for yourself, full days, maybe book them in, that you go and sit in a cafe for that day, or you go and sit in a co-working space away from what you normally do. And that could be once a quarter to begin with, if you don't have the space to do it once a week. But stop and look at where the business is, where you want it to be, and sort of gradually giving yourself the time to be a CEO or a business owner rather than just in the business all of the time. And I think I would have been a lot faster in the journey if I did that.
Yeah. And that's just the most perfect advice. I call these the CEO days, like take yourself off for a CEO day or a CEO date with yourself.
Yeah.
And, even if you're still doing most of the jobs and wearing all the hats, go and have your own boardroom meeting with yourself. We're sounding a bit strange right now, but I think everyone knows what I mean. Because the strategy and the planning is number one. Like within my membership, I have like a 5-tiered system of all the areas I feel like every business needs. Mm-hmm. And the first tier, the first layer, if you like, if someone says what's the most important one to work on, it's always the strategy. Because without a plan, without a postcode to put in the sat nav, we're never going to get where we want to get to. And that's also great advice. Megan, you've given some fabulous advice today. Thank you so much for your time. Where do people come if they want to find you?
Mostly we are on Instagram at Move with Meg with 2 G's at the end. And that's where we're mainly found. Or we have a website, which is www.movewithmeg.co.uk. And you can sort of see what we offer, how we offer it there. And it might give some people some ideas maybe for how they might change up or mix up or start their businesses.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And before we disappear, I mean, it's just been absolute pleasure listening to you today. Thank you so much for your time. But I've got a few questions to throw at you, which everyone always groans at me when I say this, and they go, "Oh God, what's she going to ask me?" And they're supposed to be quick fire questions, like the first thing that comes to the top of your head. They never are, because I think I made them too hard. And I interviewed someone the other day, and he was like, "Oh, you're going to have to cut this out. Like, you had the most ginormous pause." He's like, "I can't think of anything." But anyway, I'm going to throw them at you, but we'll start really easy. Okay. What's your favorite ice cream?
Oh, I don't like ice cream.
There we go. That's supposed to be the easy one.
That is the easy one. I don't like it.
There you go. Then there's the answer. Straightforward. Do you have a favorite business book?
What's it called? I love them. Oh, let me have a look and see if I can see it. It's a mindset one. There you go. It's really good. I'm a really good salesperson. It's called Mindset Matters, maybe. It's blue and white. I'll find it and send it to you so you can share it. But
share it. Okay.
It really helped me think about things and how I run the business from my own mindset and how my own mindset was impacting. I don't think it's actually really a business book. I think it's mainly about mindset, but it really changed the business for me.
Yeah. I mean, people are sick to death of hearing me talking about mindset and how that is everything. So it's no surprise that that's the book that you feel made a big difference. What would you say? What would you tell your younger self that would help you to get to where you are now in an easier, smoother way?
Ooh, good question. I think like the first thing that comes to mind is like keep going. But I feel like I suppose keep going, or think stay focused in terms of, to begin with, I kind of tried a little bit of everything. And I think I really knew deep down what I wanted to do, but I wanted to test the water with a little bit of everything. So I think maybe just listen to your gut and go with what you know you want to be doing.
Yeah, that's great. And if you were to be able to spend 15 minutes with somebody from history that's no longer here, who would you sit down and talk to?
That's such a good question.
This is the one that the last person got really stuck
Yeah,
with.
I'm like, oh my God, there's so many people running through my mind. Someone from history, so they have to be famous. Or not famous, but historical.
No, they could be a relative. They could be anyone.
Oh, my granny, because I never met her. She died when my dad was young, so I would love to spend some time with her.
Yeah, that would be fab. And what about if it was with someone that is still here? Who would you love? Whose brains would you love to pick?
Oh, someone that is still here. There's a woman I am obsessed with in the dance world, actually. She kind of does what I do, but for ballet, and she's in Australia. Her name is Claudia Dean, and I don't think she'd get away with 15 minutes. I think I'd keep her for a little bit longer, but yeah, to spend some time with her would be insane.
Amazing. Oh, wow. Is she on your to-do list today to reach out to Claudia Dean?
Maybe you've just pushed me over that little line, maybe.
Yeah, you should. Well, thank you so much, Megan. As I said, it's been a really lovely chatting to you today. And I cannot thank you enough for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to tell you that this episode is kindly sponsored by Sally at Dance Studio Marketing, who is your go-to solution for growing your dance school through the power of social media. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at trying to attract new students, at Dance Studio Marketing, Sally helps dance studio owners just like you to leverage the power of social media and paid ads to bring in a steady stream of students, which of course helps you to achieve more balance in your life. So if you're ready to grow with less stress, visit sallyprendergast.com, or you can connect with Sally at Dance Studio Marketing on your favorite social media platform today. My clients are getting fabulous results using Sally. So let's get those ads going and let's get your school growing. Hello and welcome, lovelies, to the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast. My name is Deborah Laws, the dance business expert. My passion is to help you turn your passion into profit while guiding you to work less and earn more. I'm super excited to share interviews with you that I know will inspire and motivate you in your schools, as well as my solo shows where I shall be sharing some great tips and strategies. So if you love the show, please do remember to review, subscribe, and share it with your fellow dance boss friends. So let's get stuck into the business of dance.